Did Andrew manipulate the late Queen? Is there a rift between William and Catherine and Beatrice and Eugenie? As Fergie is finally spotted, we ask, what's she been up to? And is the King's trip to America under threat because of the conflict in Iran? Hello and welcome to Palace Confidential. I'm Jo Elvin and here today are the fan favourites. It's Rebecca English and her Daily Mail colleague Richard Eden. Welcome to you both. Lovely to see you. Now, before we get into it, you know what I'm going to say, you really should subscribe to our channel. Thanks so much to those of you who already do. We have been able to film with leading royal experts and bring you world exclusives, such as the video we put out yesterday with Sam McAllister. That's the producer who booked that notorious, the former Prince Andrew interview. So what are you waiting for? Click that subscribe button. I promise you won't regret it. Right, down to business. Let's start the show with this charming video from the Prince and Princess of Wales.
I bawb yng Nghymru, dydd gwyl dawi hapus iawn.
Mae Cymru yn agos iawn at ein colonnau, ac rydyn yn edrych ymlaen at bob ymweliad.
Mae'n wlad hyfryd gyda hanes cyfoethog a phobl wych.
Dymunod ffylnod, llawn o ddathlu, gyda theulu a ffrindiau.
Do we have a translator anywhere on set that we could get to rush into hand? Rebecca, is this the first time we've seen Catherine speak Welsh?
It is actually on camera, yes. Although I have heard her say the odd word, I think, on an engagement. But should put a little bit of context to it. So Sunday, 1st of March, is St David's Day, which is the patron saint of Wales. Also my sister's birthday, so belated happy birthday to my sister, one of my sisters. And the couple had a visit to Wales, a joint visit to Wales, but they also recorded a video which shows both of them speaking in Welsh for the first time.
So, Richard, when they say Wales is very close to our hearts, what do you think they mean?
Well, this is a reference to the fact that one of the happiest periods in their life was when they lived, it was really their first home, and it was their first marital home, was in North Wales in Anglesey, when William was serving as a search and rescue helicopter pilot at RAF Valley. And they were very much left to their own devices there. He was working, Catherine was at home, and I think it was a sort of blissfully happy time for them. So every opportunity they have, they go back to Wales, and it's clear that they love it. I
love that. Now, some Welsh speakers have said that their pronunciation on the Welsh language is not quite there, which I mean, harsh critics, tough room. I mean, I can't even really speak my native Australian anymore. Welsh is hard.
I thought it was incredibly harsh. I graduated from the University of Wales, and after a few years there, I could barely string a sentence together. Although I was in Swansea, which in the South Wales, they don't speak Welsh as much as other parts.
OK, well, we'll leave it up to the Welsh to decide whether that qualifies as a good excuse. But, yeah.
I did see Di Davies. Remember him, the former head of Royal Protection?
Yes, we had him on the show.
Friend of the show. He said that he thought they did brilliantly. You know, it's always good to see them speaking Welsh, which is a difficult language, I think. Yeah. But he said the pronunciation wasn't necessarily great. Now, I do not know if that's the case, but other Welsh speakers have said that's the case. So maybe they have to still work at it.
It is a really difficult language to speak because I'm part Welsh and my grandmother taught me a few words of Welsh.
And you're wearing red to celebrate St David's Day, I see.
I should have had a daffodil in. So I remember her teaching me bore da, which is good morning, nosda, which is good night.
Why are you looking at me? I can't.
Just for comfort, Jo.
I can't contribute anything to this.
And kuch, which means cuddle.
Yeah, Borodar was one of the few phrases I learned, but no one asked me for a cuddle, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Or maybe if they did, I didn't know what they were asking for.
That's where you went wrong, Richard, all those years ago, I'm afraid.
If anyone wants to give Richard a kuch, let us know. Now, Charles was known, wasn't he, Rebecca, for his dedication to learning Welsh. So what do we think? Could we see William enrolling in Wales like his dad to study Welsh?
Well, yeah, in the preparation to becoming Prince of Wales, Charles enrolled at Aberystwyth University, I think in 1969 for a term to solely learn Welsh, interestingly from a Welsh nationalist who then went on to have a very good relationship with the rest of his
I know about all of this through The Crown. That's it.
Exactly. Yeah. He did pretty well by all accounts. But of course, he became Prince of Wales a lot earlier and he had a kind of big formal investiture, and William has become Prince of Wales a lot later, and he decided very deliberately not to have some kind of investiture. So I think it will probably be appreciated that he's learning the language as and when he can.
Well, it's also been a very cultural week for Catherine, hasn't it? She's in Leicester today. What's she up to, Rebecca?
She is. So it's the day after Holi, which is a Hindu festival for spring, and it's very colourful and exciting. So she's in Leicester. She's going to watch a dance class. She's going to walk down the Golden Mile, which is a well-known street. She's going to visit a sari shop. She's going to a chai cafe, and then she's going to a temple later. So it's going to be really colourful, and it's it's supporting the British Indian community in the UK.
That sounds like an absolutely gorgeous day.
It is, and it's a really gorgeous weather today as well, so it's the best day to go for a walk down the Golden Mile for definite.
Oh, I bet William's sad to be missing out on that, but then he's got his own business going on, hasn't he, in Cornwall?
Yes, well, Prince William is also the Duke of Cornwall, and he's in Cornwall today. Rebecca can tell us what he's up to.
Yeah.
Well, Cornwall's actually had a bit of bad luck over the winter because they've been really battered by some horrific storms. So big part of his big part of his visit today is going as Duke of Cornwall to say thank you to the firefighters and other first responders. But of course, it wouldn't be a visit without a bit of fun. So he's also going to a Cornish pasty factory, and he's going to make Cornish pasty. And if anyone wonders what viewers from abroad Cornish pasties are, they're kind of meat and potatoes in pastry, and
they're delicious.
Chef's kiss.
I'm going to be controversial and unpopular and say I think they always smell better than they taste. I'm just not...
No, just the smell of it makes me hungry.
Yeah, but Cornwall, I do love Cornwall. It's the most beautiful part of the world. But we were talking about the Prince of Wales learning Welsh earlier, so do you think he should be learning Cornish as well?
Cornish? Oh my goodness, come on, give the man a break.
He's the Duke of Cornwall.
I did a bit of research last night, and apparently there's only about 400 or 500 people who are fluent in Cornish these days.
Well, then we need to preserve this then.
Yeah, no,
Come on, Prince William.
I'm all for more languages. Apparently there's about 10 times that number who speak some. They can sort of have a conversation in it.
Have you got any Cornish in
It's
you?
difficult. It's Colonel, isn't it, is Cornwall. But I think probably he'll stick to the Welsh before he moves on to the Cornish.
So, well, sticking with William for a second, because a report came out this week suggesting that he wanted to cut his disgraced Uncle Andrew from the line of succession last year. Richard, what do you make of this piece? And if it's true, he must be deeply frustrated right now by any delay.
I suspect it is true, but William is in a very awkward position because... what can he do, really? He can't speak out. His father is king. He has to leave him to make the decisions about his own brother. And this subject, as we've discussed in this programme before, is one that needs parliamentary approval. It needs the different Commonwealth, the realms of the world that the king is also head of state in. They've got to be part of the decision. So in William's case, what can he do? He can indicate, there are stories like this appearing, that this is what he wants, and he certainly wanted in the past. But can you imagine if William actually put out a public statement? I mean, that would be seen as really undermining of his father. So I don't think we'll be hearing anything directly from our heir to the throne.
Do you think it's an indication that in some ways William's kind of, frustrated and on the sidelines and wanting to be in charge?
I would say yes and no. I mean, on the other hand, you could say he's probably grateful that he's not having to deal with this crisis.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he's desperately hoping that, it'll be all resolved a long time before he becomes monarch. And I suspect he's got great sympathy for his father having to deal with it. Come on, all of us, just dealing with a relative at the same time as your constitutional role is very tricky.
It's fascinating stuff. And, well, should Andrew be removed from the line of succession was our poll that we put to readers of our Palace Confidential newsletter last week. And the results were pretty comprehensive and not particularly shocking, I would say. 84% said yes, he should, and that it should happen immediately. 12% said yes, but not until any police action against him is over. And 3% said no, he should not be removed from the line of succession. Do we think that's sort of like Andrew, Beatrice, Eugenie? I mean, who's saying no? It's crazy, isn't it?
Well, I can imagine maybe, and this is me only hypothesising, but I wonder if they're saying no because once you start dabbling with the order of succession, you're almost dabbling with the whole principle of constitutional hereditary monarchy. But that's just a guess. I don't know.
I think that's a good point, actually. Well, and a reminder that if you want to take part in our polls, you need to sign up for our newsletter. It's free. It comes once a week. And as well as the poll, it's full of fascinating royal news and views. And you can sign up with your phone by scanning the QR code on screen with your phone camera, or you can click the link in the description below. It's really that easy, and it allows you to get even closer to our brilliant royal experts like our good Rebecca and Richard here. So back to the line of succession question now, because there seems to be growing public support for a move. But in the article that we just discussed, a government source said it could take years for legislation to remove Andrew. And that will surely frustrate a lot of people. So, Richard, if William is frustrated at this delay, is there anything realistically that he can do to move the process along?
I mean, William could be pressuring his father privately, for all we know. And there's no reason for this process to drag on. I mean, I keep hearing people say, oh, it could take ages, we've got to wait till after there's any legal action. No, get on with it. I mean, we've already heard the Prime Ministers of Australia and New Zealand, they're volunteering to say, yes, we'd be happy for Andrew to be removed from the line of succession. And so it's a process that could be done very quickly, I'd say, and they should get on with it.
And what do you think, Rebecca? Do you think it's fair to say that previously William hasn't been so keen to be involved in anything to do with the saga around Andrew, but do you think that could have changed?
I think we've always or long known William's feelings about his uncle. I mean, I don't think it takes one of those body language experts that we see quoted so often to realise when we saw them standing on the steps, you remember, of Westminster Cathedral for the Duchess of Kent's funeral, what he felt about the situation and what he felt about his uncle still taking a place front and centre at royal events. But my understanding is he hasn't been so keen to take action against him over the years, because that was really down to Queen Elizabeth and also to his father when he acceded to the throne. But people are saying that they are now very much in lockstep about how this goes forward, both King Charles and Prince William. So it sounds like they've definitely got a united front now.
Well, guess what? More shocking Andrew news came out this week, but we also heard updates on Sarah Ferguson, who had been missing in action after Andrew's arrest, as well as a decision made by the royals that left Princess Beatrice and Eugenie completely blindsided, I'm quoting. More on that later in the show, but for now, let's take a look at the updates on Andrew. Now, Rebecca, there were reports of a sort of confusing scenario with a Sir Christopher Geidt, who was the late Queen's private secretary. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, much loved by the Queen and much trusted. There was a strange situation with Sir Christopher Geidt. He was a really loyal and, very well regarded member of staff, and he was effectively ousted by both Andrew and actually King Charles when he was Prince of Wales from his position, because they disagreed with the way he was handling some things. And I think they thought he had too much power and sway with the Queen. One of the things, my understanding from the Times, I remember breaking this story, was that Andrew didn't like the fact that Christopher would speak against him. To his mother, and when he then was ennobled, he became Lord Geidt. He went into the House of Lords. The Mail on Sunday said, I think it was around maybe 2019, that he was told by a contact that there were real concerns over Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's relationships with Russian oligarchs, and I think the suggestion was that Lord Geidt would pass this back to his old bosses at Buckingham Palace, but he effectively said, look, I've tried this before and no one wants to listen.
No one wants to listen. I mean, Richard, this is the latest in a string of suggestions that intelligence about Andrew could have been suppressed by the royals for decades. Well, what do you make of this?
Well, suppressing, I mean, a lot of it was actually out in the open. You might remember the disclosures from the WikiLeaks files in 2010.
Gosh, yes.
And loads of stuff came out about the then Prince Andrew. And it was all sort of diplomats' reports about how badly he'd behaved, how obnoxious and rude, and the damage he had done. And I was just reading one the other day where he'd actually really laid into anti-corruption campaigners and was talking about, talking about the damage they were doing. And with hindsight, you think, my goodness, why at that point was he not stripped of his role as a trade envoy? But the following year, he went to stay with Jeffrey Epstein in his New York house after he'd been released from jail. So there was clearly no sense that his behaviour had to be controlled. And I'm afraid a lot of that does seem to stem from, his close relationship with his mother, Queen Elizabeth.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, Rebecca? This conversation, I'm afraid, does seem to be getting louder around how much responsibility should the late Queen bear for the palace's reluctance to address Andrew's behaviour.
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer. And, I, for one, loved working alongside her and had a great deal of admiration for her. But I do think there are some questions about culpability when it comes to this. Not just because Andrew was a bit of a weak point for her, but also it was his behaviour. So I was told this many times, I've written this many times from contacts and sources over the years, that whenever an Andrew problem has popped up, even if you could have had a sensible conversation about it, he would then literally just drive over from Royal Lodge to Windsor Castle because he was the closest to her, and he was always popping in and walking the dogs with her, and would just whisper in her ear, and then she would change her mind. Or I remember particularly there was one incident, it might have been over the Platinum Jubilee, maybe it was something before, it might have even been Prince Philip's funeral. But regardless, he wanted to wear his military uniform.
Oh, I remember this, the
King
Admiral
Charles,
thing.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was my exclusive, but I can't remember what it was referring to specifically. But King Charles, then Prince of Wales, was really adamant that this is not going to happen. He's not going to be allowed to wear a uniform. And there was a huge row going on behind the scenes, and they thought they'd come to some sort of conclusion. And lo and behold, Andrew pops up at Windsor and says, well, I've been talking to Mummy about it. And there was an immense amount of frustration over the years. So I understand the questions about the Queen. I think they will continue, and it's absolutely right that they do so. But I, having known people involved at the heart of it, I know a lot of it was also down to Andrew's manipulation of her as well.
Well, now, many people trace Andrew's downfall back to the Newsnight interview he agreed to do in 2019. On Wednesday, we had the pleasure of speaking to the woman who organised that now infamous interview, Sam McAllister. In a world exclusive, Sam told us what she thinks the palace should do now.
I think the palace needs to build a time machine, go back to just after this interview happened and react in a way that was proportionate with how the public saw the severity of what happened. In a sense, the horse has bolted. I think it's good that, people are now going on record, the King, for example, and it's clear that the mood around Andrew has changed profoundly. But it's 6 long years later. We hit year 7 in November. So in a sense, the speed was the thing that was needed, and that opportunity has now gone.
Well, our full interview with Sam will play directly after this, but it looks like a lot of you have already watched it, including Joni Goodrow, who commented, this was an extremely interesting and important piece, and it truly clarifies just how unrealistic Andrew is when he thinks about just how much harm he has inflicted on the royal family and his own daughters. And we also heard from Sterling, who said, fab recall of the infamous interview. It's making me want to go and watch the interview again. Oh, I don't think I could bear it, could you? We'll put a link to Sam's book, Scoops, in the description below. And a couple of questions now from last week's Palace Confidential, where I was chatting to Richard Eden and Robert Hardman. Mariella Anton asks, how do you know that Andrew doesn't have enough money now? According to Andrew Loney, he's got lots of money that he's made from his nefarious deals. Now, Rebecca, we don't really know, do we? What do you think?
A good question, and we don't, because of course he is a private citizen now, so I don't have any right to know how much money he's got in his bank account, and actually, ironically, Buckingham Palace doesn't either. I think it's important to point one thing out though, and this is correcting a narrative that has crept in recent years, that there's been people suggesting that he has bequests from people like the late Queen Mother or his father, late Duke of Edinburgh, that he's been living off. And I've been told by sources that is categorically not true. There is no family slush fund, for want of a better word, behind him. So anything he's got to live off is his own money, and also now the annual stipend that the King has given him back. Now
So how is he making money? Because he doesn't need to make money, does he?
Well, he would argue he does, because he's not had a kind of salary, so to speak, and this is what's obviously left him into having business deals, which he seemingly took a cut off from lots of very questionable business contacts. I would also say, I don't know the truth of what Andrew Lowney is claiming, and I'm not sure how Andrew would know. We have suspicion he's creamed money off the top of a lot of the work he was doing as a trade ambassador over the years, but he also let money run through his fingers.
He does spend a lot, doesn't he?
He had a big lifestyle, that massive home Royal Lodge to support. So it's a very questionable about how much money he has of that left.
Well, clearly the king must think that his brother Andrew doesn't have much money because he's agreed to carry on funding him. You know, he's given him accommodation.
But that's how I drew my conclusion, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, how he may just be relying on what Andrew's told him, who knows?
And it's come up a lot, hasn't it? This question of who might pay his legal fees.
Well, this could get serious because if, for example, he were to apply for legal aid, which British people can get, which is taxpayers' money to fund legal support, you would have to disclose what funds you have. So that would be interesting. But the idea of taxpayers paying for Andrew's legal fees would be a terrible look for the royal family.
Is it technically a possibility?
Technically it is, yeah. But I think that the king certainly would want to avoid that. But it presents something Rebecca's written about, but the awkward situation of, in the king's name, he could be prosecuted, and at the same time, the king could be funding his defence.
I think, well, they want to find a situation where they would avoid that at all costs, but the King has basically said, well, the one thing I won't do is I will not have any taxpayers' money spent on Andrew's defence. I don't think he wants to give him any money, and he hopes that he won't have to. But if push comes to shove, he would, if he was allowed to. And of course, constitutionally, that might not be possible. So again, it's one of these endless possibilities that keeps on going round and round.
Rebecca, in all your years of being a royal reporter, did you ever expect that you'd be discussing matters like this? Is it the most sort of shocking thing you've ever...
Funny enough, I was discussing that with one of my colleagues in television the other day because they were saying how shocking it was, and they said, God, think of the things we have seen and covered over recent years. Obviously, the death of Queen Elizabeth, Prince Philip, the whole Megxit saga. But this has got to come up there because every time you think about it, you have got Queen Elizabeth's son, 8th, still in line to the throne, being investigated by the police over misconduct in public office. You know, when you hear those words laid out, it is truly extraordinary.
Indeed. Well, now for something completely different, because we have a question from Basketball Mum now, who asks, has Princess Anne ever wore her hair down? There's a gear change for you. Rebecca, has she?
Hell yes, she has, is my answer.
There you go,
to that.
Basketball Mum. Yeah.
Not in recent years. She's preferred that chignon, as I think I revealed in one of my birthday portraits of her. She does it herself.
I would love to know exactly how long it is, because we can't really tell, can we?
I think it is quite long, and certainly we've got these wonderful portraits of Princess Anne, Princess Royal, kind of back in the 70s when she... Do you remember those, the photographs that look like got Vaseline smeared over the lens?
Oh, yes. Maybe they did.
Staring wistfully into the distance.
I love that photograph where she's
hair.
at the barbecue with her father at Balmoral.
Yes, that's a nice one.
Is her hair down in that one?
Her hair's down in that one,
She was a cool dresser.
Yeah. She was, she was the royal family's glamour puss then, and I would argue now, still in her own way.
Absolutely.
So yes, she definitely wore her hair down, just not in recent years, which I think that's how people think of her now.
You've got questions, we've got answers. And we've actually posted 4 videos in the past week. So thank you to everyone who showed us love in the comments for those, including our interview with the royal author Victoria Arbiter, who questioned if Andrew really was the Queen's favourite child. She also told us all about her fascinating childhood growing up in Kensington Palace. So if you missed that, we'll leave a link to it in the description below. Well, another week, another round of murky claims. I'm sorry, I can't help the news. It's just what is happening, involving the former Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson and their relationship with the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Rebecca, this news story suggests that Epstein used Fergie's debts to sort of like get in with the royal family.
As you say, it gets murkier and murkier and more distasteful. So the latest revelations are that Sarah Ferguson, former Duchess of York, emailed Jeffrey Epstein when he was still in prison serving his sentence for child sex offences, and asked for his help with setting up the commercial side of a kind of pseudo-philanthropic effort she was doing called Mother's Army.
Mother's Army for someone who's in prison.
Yeah, I know. It beggars belief, and was asking for his help and his advice in how that she could set up the commercial wing of that. I mean, I know no more what to say on that.
We know that it was Epstein's idea. He suggested it, and she replied a few days later, My dear, spectacular and special friend Jeffrey, you are a legend and I am so proud of you. I mean, I just want to be sick. Richard, it's a convicted sex offender she's writing to. It's hard to believe that she cared at all about his crimes.
Yeah, I found it all quite hard to take because I've always sort of, I wouldn't say been a supporter, but I've quite admired Sarah in the past, particularly for the way she's, bounced back from scandal. She's always been very positive and that sort of thing. But stuff like this is just revolting. It's the way that they were just so eager for him to be released from prison as well. There were some other details from the Epstein files that we've seen this week in which Andrew was talking about celebrating with him in Paris, celebrating his release from prison. And let's just go back. So remember, in his interview with the BBC at Buckingham Palace, he said the only reason he'd spoken to Epstein after his release was to tell him that he didn't want anything more to do with him. But the truth is the opposite, that he wanted to celebrate. He was, delighted that he was free again. So, the lies he's told are sickening. They really are.
It's indefensible. It's all indefensible.
There's a long list of people who seem absolutely fine with carrying on their friendship with the convicted child sex offender, including members of our royal family. It's great, isn't it? Rebecca, after seeming to disappear, though, Fergie was seen in Ireland. Was it this week or last week?
In the last couple of weeks. I mean, we haven't seen her in public since September last year. We haven't seen hide nor hair of her. She's obviously been on a lot of travels, and she was said to have been spotted at an airport near to a spa that she's visited in Ireland before in Donegal. And we've got no proof of this. It's just been what's been reported. I was told by a contact of mine, I think at the beginning of last week, that they believed she was back in the UK. Obviously, Ireland is not part of the UK, but that she was back, closer to home. But I've no idea where she is, and we've still not heard a single word from her personally to explain any of this Epstein correspondence. I just don't see how that can be justified.
And what do you make of the reports that she was supposedly staying in a Swiss clinic that cost £13,000 a day? That's nearly 15,000 US dollars. Richard, my first question is the one that presumably is everyone's first question, is if that's true, how's she affording that?
That's what everyone will have thought when they read this. But when you do a bit of digging, it turns out that I think her publicists also have undertaken publicity for this clinic. So perhaps it was some sort of freebie, she was there briefly, something like that, I imagine. But I don't think there's any suggestion she was there for a long time. And it is massively expensive, this clinic.
Yeah.
And the one thing I think we can be assured, just from knowing this through the course of our work, but also what we've seen in the Epstein files, is that Sarah Ferguson never paid for anything personally. It was always off the largesse of others.
It's a nice way to glide through life, isn't it? It'd be easy, wouldn't it?
I also just don't see how you can justify £13,000 a day on a spa. I mean, I love a spa as much as the rest of ladies.
Those robes are going to be damn fluffy.
From what I've heard, they don't give you much food or drink either.
Oh, is it one of those?
That's the irony. The more you pay, the less you actually get. I'd want a gourmand meal for that.
Well, let's move on to the York sisters. As they've returned to the spotlight, we've heard, Rebecca, that the King has wanted to keep the daughters, out of the shadow of this developing and growing scandal. But questions do now keep being asked, don't they, about how much they knew and how much they benefited from their parents' activities.
Yeah, I do think it was a noble instinct of the King to say, look, these girls are his nieces, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. They shouldn't be made to pay for the sins of their father. And I do think that's a noble instinct, but I think the trouble is the more we're uncovering, the more that we see, particularly in Princess Beatrice's case, that she may have been a little more hands-on than we've otherwise suspected when it comes to her mother and father's travails over the years. And I think that will undoubtedly have an impact on whether we see her at royal functions, because don't forget, although they've never had an official royal role, we have seen them pop up at garden parties each year. I remember covering a couple of Commonwealth events at Buckingham Palace where they've turned up.
Well, there was a time, wasn't there, where we thought they could be ushered in to fill the Meghan and Harry void a little bit in terms of royal duties.
But as you'll know, I've always strongly argued against that, because I don't think they should have an official royal role. And I think it's fine for them to act in a supportive role, or has been previously, but I've never thought they should have an official royal role for lots of reasons. And I think I think it's incredibly unlikely we're going to be seeing them any events in
Well,
the immediate future.
That snowball has started rolling, hasn't it, Richard? Because I believe that there's a key summer event that they won't be invited to.
Yes, this was a disclosure in the Mail on Sunday by our colleague Charlotte Griffiths, who reported that they will be excluded from Royal Ascot this year. Now, this is a big deal because Royal Ascot, as we know, you did a live broadcast from it last year.
Yes, and hopefully we will again.
It's one of the highlights of the royal year. Last year in glorious sunshine. Beatrice and Eugenie love it. They often go for a few days, and they'll often ride in the carriage procession from Windsor Castle. Often previously the Queen, now the King, would lay on a lunch for honoured guests, and then they'll arrive by carriage, and it's wonderful. It's all part of the day. But what Charlotte Griffiths reported was that this year they won't be invited to take part in that procession, and they'll be excluded from the royal box completely. Now that's they would be very saddened by that, and it is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
The one thing I would say on that is I could expect seeing them at Royal Ascot, because it doesn't mean they can't go to Royal Ascot as guests and be part of the enclosure more generally. But this is the question:
would they?
Is over.
Would they?
They might not want to. They might want to keep their heads down from something.
Well,
like that this year.
Yes.
Yeah.
They could go as members of the royal enclosure. They could go and they could be with their friends and enjoy the day.
They do like going, but to be sort of like notably not in that procession might be a bit humiliating.
If they're not, then I think it would be deemed pretty significant.
Yeah, and a good example would be their father, because when he was not part of the royal procession, I think he stayed away completely.
That's right, yes.
Even though obviously he was living a stone's throw away in Windsor.
And what do you make of this suggestion that there is something of a growing rift between William and Catherine and the York sisters?
Well, I've written about this for an article for the Daily Mail, which our viewers can find, and that's further to Charlotte's article. I was told by a friend of William and Catherine that they do not want to be photographed with any of the York family, and that includes Beatrice and Eugenie. It has to be said, William and Catherine don't appear to be as keen on Royal Ascot as the King and the Queen. Last year, for example, despite still being treated for cancer, the King went every day to Royal Ascot in blazing heat. William went one day and Catherine didn't go at all. But the suggestion is that William doesn't want to be photographed with his cousins because of all that's going on. He thinks it's a bad look for the royal family. I should say that the palace, Kensington Palace, do not want to comment on this, and sources say, it's far too early, discussions are not being had. But so that was essentially a claim from a friend who said this. But won't it be fascinating to see what does transpire at Royal Ascot? My suspicion is we will not see them there in the royal procession, and definitely not photographed with other members of the royal family.
Okay, well, obviously, time will tell, but we'll see. We'll put a link to Richard's column in the description below, which I'm going to proclaim as quite minxy on that subject. So enjoy that. So, Rebecca, we did hear a while back that William had reportedly wanted an ethics check of the sisters' investments now, but they refused. What's this all about?
I'm going to pull one of my faces at this. I'm sorry, I don't give that story any credence at all.
Pardon me for asking. I'll keep my trap shut in future.
You're welcome to ask, and I know there's a massive interest in it, but I really don't think that story is true. I think, obviously, William is taking a keen interest in what's going on, but all of the family acknowledge that Beatrice and Eugenie are private citizens. They've got no right to know how much money they got, how they earn it, where it's invested. But I do think he'll be taking a keen interest in it. He's always been pretty friendly with Beatrice and Eugenie and fond of them, but I don't think he's kind of socialised with them as much as he would do, say, Zara or Mike. There's just a different kind of age between them and kind of different social sets they mix in.
Can you see any future at all where something like this, sort of like bigger transparency of the royals' accounts is something that will just need to play a role for them?
Well, it won't surprise you to know that a journalist thinks there should be greater transparency, which I do, and I've always done, and I've always been very happy to ask awkward questions at the annual review every year when we get to sit down and explore both Buckingham Palace and Clarence House's, as it was now Kensington Palace's, finance. And, we won't shy away from asking difficult questions. Sometimes we get an answer, but it's fair to say, although they are forthcoming about a lot more stuff now than they have been in the past, it's probably not as transparent as it could be.
What do you make, Richard, of there was a very strongly worded piece by A.N. Wilson at the weekend which criticised the royal family's whole attitude to spending, when he even sort of like did the unthinkable, really. And what do you make of it all?
God, I was really surprised to read this. I mean, A.N. Wilson's a great writer, and he is still, he says, just a monarchist, but he was essentially accusing Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip of being really greedy and saying they'd all claim for all these expenses on foreign trips and stuff like this. I have to admit, I just found it quite tasteless on the basis that, you know, they're both dead. They can't answer back now. And so I just feel quite uncomfortable with those claims. But his wider point was that if the monarchy is to survive and thrive into the future, it will have to do so much more modestly. And he's very cynical about whether things can survive, such as the Duchy of Cornwall, you know, being inherited from one royal to another, with its vast £1 billion fortune, and also...
Oh, but I need those lemon biscuits, Richard. I need them.
And also the Duchy of Lancaster, which the monarch doesn't have to account at all for how they spend this. I think last year it was about £25 million. So it's extraordinary. It's a sort of relic of history, which hasn't been updated. And A.M. Wilson, certainly in his piece, was arguing that he doesn't see how this can continue.
This is the first time I've really considered how this all affects me. I need those biscuits in my life. But let's move on to something really rather more serious. There's a lot of talk going on at the moment, isn't there, about, obviously, there's this huge state visit planned to America by the King in April. With everything going on, which you can see on our front pages, everything going on with Andrew, everything going on in the Middle East, there's a lot of discussion about whether or not that will go ahead, whether it should go ahead. What is your view?
And President Trump has been very critical of the UK's Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, this week, describing as not really Winston Churchill type character. And the irony is at the moment, the recce's, I know, for this very trip are taking place or have been taking place over the last couple of weeks. So it is taking place at an awkward time, but I think for the state visit to not happen would probably not be a good look, and I don't think it would help. And it may be that we can try to reset or resettle relationships using this soft diplomacy that the royal family is so famed for, because don't forget that there's definite admiration from President Trump to our royal family. And I think this is where people suddenly underestimate King Charles. You know, even during his periods between his presidencies, the King was still writing to him, writing to Melania, keeping that relationship going, which you could argue was quite insightful as it's turned out. But I can understand the course of people saying it shouldn't go ahead. But the royal family have often been thrust into difficult positions, taking place with a really awkward international dynamic, and they tend to do very well. But of course, we also, as you say, have the situation of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and the strong feeling in some parts of the US over what's been happening. So again, I can imagine there'll be a worry.
I hope it does go ahead, because, you know, Britain's relationship with the USA is so important that, you know, whether the American president, you know, doesn't think much of our current Prime Minister, it's important that relationship endures.
I suppose my question on that is, if it does go ahead, is it embarrassing or useful for Sir Keir Starmer?
I think he'd probably see it as useful, because then, you know, he wants to maintain relations. I mean, he's got problems of his own at the moment. He's trying to appease, you know, left-wing voters. He's in quite a precarious position. So I would have thought that British Prime Minister will want it to go ahead, and I suspect it will.
Okay. And also because it's the 250th anniversary of independence.
Not something we should be celebrating necessarily.
Well, you know, this is where United Kingdom.
We wouldn't have had the musical Hamilton without it, Richard. So, you know, yeah.
I've got a guilty secret. I've never seen that, actually.
No, I've never seen it.
We need to correct that. It's amazing.
Yeah. But we are quite strange as a country in the way we kind of self-flagellate over countries getting their independence from us, and we see that as an important part of recognising things that have been difficult that happened in the past, but actually renewing our relationship with those countries and moving forward. So I actually think the British government will see it as very, very important to have some kind of British regal representative there. And they do really feel that the King should be the one to do it.
No doubt they will have a regal representative in you. You'll be going, right?
Well, hopefully, if it goes ahead, I will be,
Yeah. Well, let's all go. Let's go.
I'd certainly like to, yeah.
Now, Richard, in your column on Saturday, you revealed an intriguing detail about who now owns the Queen's house in Wiltshire. What's this all about?
Yeah, this was an item in my diary, Eden Confidential, and it's about Queen Camilla's retreat in Wiltshire, Raymill House, which despite getting married, she kept her home and she actually spends most weekends there, I think. And it's a lovely place to spend time with her children and grandchildren. Well, what my story was she's transferred ownership to a trust, and the beneficiaries of that will be her 2 children. So it's quite interesting because, I mean, it would appear to be a tax avoidance measure, which whether, I mean, personally, it's what lots of people do. We all want to minimise our tax bills. Whether it's a good look for someone who does benefit from taxpayers' largesse.
Cutting out the middleman, isn't it, really?
Yes, otherwise it would go to His Majesty's Revenue and Customs. No, it's an interesting question, but I got a few responses to say, actually, that's a good idea. I plan to do that with my children. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay, there you go. We're learning a few loopholes along the way here today. Now, we
Never said this programme's not informative.
Exactly, we've learned so much. We learned about Richard's Welsh, all sorts of things. Now, we mentioned public royal engagements at the top of the show, but there's a secret visit that took place on Wednesday. Rebecca, what's this?
So Dame SHUN Legbook, who was a long-term friend of the royal family and mother to Tiggy Legbook, who was William and Harry's.
Tiggy Legbook is a name that no one forgets.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Their kind of unofficial nanny when they were younger, but, a huge figure in their lives. She sadly died. There was a memorial service. And I think it's worth, pointing out that royals don't often go to funerals and memorial service unless there's a really close personal relationship, and actually in this case Prince William attended, as did Princess Anne and the Duchess of Edinburgh, which I think shows what an important figure she was in their lives. I'm quite interested to know actually whether Prince Harry was invited, because he would have been very, very close to her as well.
Yes.
And whether he just chose not to attend or not. But I thought it was quite interesting he wasn't there.
I mean, to have 3 members of the royal family turn up is quite exceptional, for your memorial service, Richard. What can you tell us about SHUN Legbook?
Dame SHUN was sort of, almost like a member of the royal family in the sense that her family had been entwined with the fortunes of the Windsors. They've been, she was, representative of the monarch. Dame SHUN was involved in loads of charities in Wales, and they're really big figures there. And obviously Tiggy was almost like a mother, wasn't she, to William and Harry. I do love to see Prince William and Princess Anne on engagements together. I was watching a video of them, I think, meeting well-wishers after the memorial service, and you get the impression they enjoy spending time together.
They are a good double act, aren't they?
We like them as a double act,
more
definitely.
More William and Anne, please. Now, this visit might have been private, but this coming Monday, several members of the royal family will be the centre of attention, won't they, at the Commonwealth Day service. What can we expect, Rebecca?
A full turnout, really full turnout. King, Queen, Prince and Princess of Wales, other senior royals. And I think all eyes will be on them because we haven't seen lots of these big events where they all turn out since the Andrew Mountbatten Windsor revelations, and in years gone by he would have been expected to be there as well. And it's important for the King because obviously he's head of the Commonwealth, and that's a legacy that was very much emboldened by Queen Elizabeth. And it's a joyful event. It's lovely when you go, I'll be there. I've got a seat in the Abbey, and I think it's a way of reinforcing the British monarchy's ties with many of those places around the world that they will visit over the coming years as well.
What do you think the reception will be like, Richard? Obviously, it's a very public event. There'll be lots of well-wishers and lots of spectators out, but it is also a really stressful time for the monarchy. Do you think that we might see that reflected in the crowd?
Well, I think it was last year, the campaign organisation Republic tried to organise quite a big protest outside. So perhaps it was coincidence. They had some drummers just as you came in, so that drowned out the noise of the shouts from the protesters. So
you think they might have thought that one through?
So our viewers can look out for some lively bandsmen at the just before you get into the Abbey.
I think Republic will double down this year. I think they're going to try and make a real event around it, because it's not often they get the chance to make their voice heard at big public events like that. And you're not that far away from the Abbey. They're on the other side of the road, but you're within kind of megaphone shouting distance. I think.
How sad that would be, because the Commonwealth is a great organisation. It's a voluntary organisation. It was the pride and joy of Queen Elizabeth. And there aren't many organisations in the world like that which bring people together. And
great for me, the Commonwealth.
Really positive, yeah.
I wouldn't be here without it.
Family of nations.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a shame if they turn it into some sort of political point scoring.
Well, watch this space, we'll see. But in the meantime, hear that? Regular viewers will know that herald means it's the time to celebrate an unsung hero of the royal family. Rebecca, it's a birthday boy we're celebrating.
It is. Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh.
Oh, happy birthday.
62 on March the 10th. Normal working day from what I hear. But his wife, Sophie, may actually be away for work, which again is kind of the way they like it. I mean, they made a big deal around their 60th birthdays and their 25th wedding anniversary recently. Sophie actually gave a beautiful tribute to Edward on his 60th birthday, just saying how proud she was of him, how she still likes the way he looks in a uniform. You know, the spark in that marriage is still there. But again, one of these people we talked about in the programme, didn't we, the other week, we don't shout about his work a lot. But
well, because that's the thing, because we've seen a lot of what Sophie's been up to recently, but what is a day's work for Edward?
Well, there's various charities he supports, so youth opportunity, education. He obviously very involved with the Duke of Edinburgh Award set up by his late father, Prince Philip. He does a lot of stuff around the theatre as well. So yeah, each member of the royal family have their kind of chosen themes and they pursue it. Sometimes those themes cross over. But, you know, I think that when I wrote his 60th birthday profile, you know, a lot of friends spoke to me about how you'll often get the tube to engagements and just walk along, you know, very quiet, not showy, you know, about what he's doing.
Yeah, I think I said in this program I saw him and Sophie arriving in a taxi.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you said, yeah,
at a party.
you know, but it is the bread and butter which keeps the royal family going.
If I saw Prince Edward on the tube, I'd probably tell myself, that can't be right, that can't be Prince Edward, which is probably the way he gets away with it.
Well, I think one of the great anecdotes in my piece was someone who was on holiday with them down in the southwest of England, and they were doing the shopping in the local spa, and someone said to him, "God, you really look like Prince Edward," and he was like, "Oh yeah, no, I often get that," because they couldn't imagine Prince Edward literally just putting the groceries at the end of the checkout.
Not in a spa.
Yeah,
I was at the checkout in Boots, the chemist, the other day with the royal. I won't say who, because I don't want
go on,
privacy,
Richard.
but no, because it's, you know, they're Boots, it's a chemist and everything, but yeah, you know, they've
He'll
got
tell us after, and then I'll tell you.
Say
got to-
things like that, Richard.
They've got to do their own shopping.
He'll tell me, and then I'll tell you. Well, to mark the big day for Edward, we thought we'd gather together some of our favourite pictures of the now Duke of Edinburgh. We're sort of like leaning in on a theme here. We had Sir Tim Lawrence last week, and now we've got 62 pictures of the Duke of Edinburgh. wishing His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh a very happy birthday from all of us here at Palace Confidential, and a reminder that our interview with Sam McAllister will play straight after this. You can click here for that. A reminder that if you don't already, please do give us a subscribe. It really does make a huge difference. Just time to say thanks to Richard, Rebecca, and to you for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.